Have you ever passed by a collection of tents huddled beneath a freeway overpass and found yourself wondering how things reached this point? What exactly is unfolding in this nation where holding down a full-time job can still result in living on the streets? It's a sight becoming disturbingly common, forcing us to confront uncomfortable truths about the state of the American dream. The world is buzzing with countless significant events, from geopolitical shifts to technological breakthroughs, yet right here at home, a quiet crisis is escalating, threatening the very foundation of stability for millions. Let's delve into this pressing domestic issue. Now, broaden your perspective. Imagine not just isolated encampments, but entire states teetering on the edge of crisis. Picture regions where poverty tightens its grip on families daily, where the basic necessity of housing becomes an unattainable luxury, and where shelters, meant to be temporary havens, are constantly overflowing, unable to meet the overwhelming demand. This isn't a localized problem confined to a handful of major cities. It's a phenomenon spreading with alarming speed, much like a wildfire consuming dry brush. Some of the very states we'll discuss today were once beacons of hope, embodying the quintessential American dream of prosperity and upward mobility. They represented opportunity, a place where hard work was believed to guarantee a better life. But the landscape has dramatically shifted. Today, these same states find themselves precariously close to widespread collapse, grappling with interconnected challenges that seem insurmountable. From rents soaring to astronomical heights, far outpacing wage growth, to devastating natural disasters that can obliterate entire communities in an instant, wiping away homes and livelihoods. The downward spiral is starkly real and deeply concerning. The combination of economic pressure, housing scarcity, and sometimes unexpected calamities creates a perfect storm, leaving countless individuals and families vulnerable and desperate. We're witnessing a fundamental challenge to the promise of security and stability that many took for granted. Stick with us as we explore the 10 U.S. states spiraling fastest into the depths of poverty and homelessness, and be sure to watch until the end, where we'll attempt to draw some conclusions from these troubling trends. We encourage you to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our analysis on critical issues like this. And please, give this video a thumbs up if you find this information valuable. It truly helps us reach a wider audience. Also, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We love hearing from our viewers around the globe. Let's begin with California. At first glance, it embodies paradise. You see the iconic palm trees swaying gently, sun-drenched beaches stretching along the coast, and opulent billion-dollar residences perched on hillsides overlooking the Pacific. It's the image sold in movies and postcards. However, veer just slightly off the beaten path, take an unexpected turn away from the tourist centers, and a vastly different picture emerges. You'll discover entire streets transformed into tent cities, sidewalks lined with makeshift shelters. You'll see individuals forced to sleep in their vehicles, their cars becoming their only refuge. These aren't just isolated incidents. They are widespread symptoms of a deep-seated crisis. California, the Golden State, tragically holds the grim title for the highest homeless population in the entire United States. Official figures indicate over 187,000 people are experiencing homelessness in California, and that number is relentlessly climbing. You would likely be taken aback to learn how many among them are not unemployed or uneducated. A significant portion hold down jobs, often working multiple low-wage positions. Many have children they are struggling to support. Some even possess college degrees, credentials that were once thought to ensure a stable future. The stark reality is that housing in California has become a luxury item, not a fundamental right. Median rents in major metropolitan areas like San Francisco are nearing an astounding $3,000 per month. For someone working a minimum wage job, or even a moderately paying one, affording such sums is simply impossible. The sheer cost of living, particularly housing, has created an insurmountable barrier for a vast segment of the population. It's a paradox. A state synonymous with immense wealth and innovation is simultaneously failing to provide the most basic need, shelter, for a huge number of its residents. And guess what? This isn't solely a big city dilemma. Smaller towns and rural communities across the state are grappling with the same struggles, facing rising homelessness and inadequate resources. The question then becomes, how did the state that once symbolized the American dream, the land of golden opportunity, transform into a place where so many find it impossible to afford to live? Why are more people leaving California than moving in? A trend that reverses decades of population growth. And perhaps most crucially, if one of the wealthiest economies on the planet cannot effectively address this crisis, who possibly can? These are critical questions that demand answers, reflecting a challenge that extends far beyond California's borders. Please, remember to watch until the very end of this video, as we will be summarizing the key takeaways and drawing important conclusions from the situations unfolding in these states. Now, let's journey across the country to New York. The image conjured is one of towering skyscrapers piercing the clouds, the dazzling lights of Broadway illuminating the night, and the persistent narrative of dreams materializing against the iconic city backdrop. That's the picture many hold, the one consistently painted in popular culture. But scrutinize this image more closely. Look beyond the shimmering facade, and a different reality surfaces. This is New York, a state where homelessness surged by a staggering 18% in the year 2023 alone. It's a place where the shelter system is stretched to its absolute limit, consistently operating at or beyond capacity, struggling to accommodate the sheer volume of people in need. You find families, children, and the elderly caught in this devastating spiral. Some are forced to seek refuge on subway trains during the cold nights. Others are crammed into overcrowded shelters, environments often ill-suited for vulnerable populations. Many find themselves stuck in emergency hotels, a temporary measure that offers little stability or hope for a permanent solution. And here's the truly staggering statistic, the one that underscores the scale of the crisis. New York City, just one metropolis within the state, is home to over 100,000 homeless individuals. This figure surpasses the entire homeless population of many other states combined. But what fuels this dire situation? Several factors converge. Rents that consistently skyrocket, far exceeding the rate of wage increases. A chronic and severe lack of affordable housing units, a problem decades in the making. And an overwhelmed social service system attempting the Herculean task of managing both entrenched local poverty and a significant influx of migrants seeking asylum and assistance. One might reasonably expect that a place wielding such immense financial power and global influence would possess the resources and strategies to effectively combat homelessness. Yet despite its wealth, the cracks in the system are not only visible, but actively widening. The infrastructure designed to support those in need is buckling under the immense pressure. This raises profound questions about priorities and efficacy. How long can this situation persist before the weight becomes utterly unbearable, leading to a complete system breakdown? How perilously close are we to a tipping point, a point of no return where the crisis spirals completely out of control? The juxtaposition of extreme wealth and extreme poverty within the same state borders is a stark reminder of the inequalities that plague modern society, demanding urgent attention and innovative solutions. Let's shift our focus south, to Florida. Often envisioned as the ultimate retirement haven, it beckons with images of pristine white sand beaches, gently swaying palm trees under perpetual sunshine, and communities designed for leisure. It's the postcard-perfect destination many dream of for their golden years. The Sunshine State, as it's known, paints a picture of relaxation and ease. But peel back this idyllic veneer, look beneath the surface of the tourist brochures and retirement community advertisements, and you'll uncover a brewing storm, a crisis far more disturbing than the tropical weather patterns the state occasionally endures. This is Florida, a state witnessing an alarming and heartbreaking trend. A rapidly growing number of older Americans finding themselves without a home. It's profoundly shocking to realize how many seniors, individuals in their 60s and 70s, people who likely contributed to society throughout their working lives, are now relegated to living out of their cars, surviving in transient motels, or even sleeping on sidewalks. Many of these individuals never anticipated ending up in such dire circumstances. They played by the rules, worked hard, perhaps raised families, and expected a measure of security in their later years. The primary culprit? The astronomical explosion in housing costs. Rents across the state have soared. In major cities like Miami, the median rent now significantly exceeds $2,500 per month. Consider this against the backdrop of the average monthly Social Security check, which hovers just above $1,800. The arithmetic simply doesn't work. There's a fundamental disconnect between income and the cost of basic shelter. This impossible financial equation means that countless seniors, living on fixed incomes, are being priced out of their homes and communities. But the crisis doesn't discriminate by age alone. Families with children are also struggling immensely. Cities like Orlando and Tampa have seen dramatic spikes in eviction rates, displacing families and adding to the ranks of the homeless. Affordable housing is scarce, almost mythical, with waiting lists for assistance programs stretching out for years, offering little immediate relief. Furthermore, Florida boasts a massive service industry: tourism, food service, hospitality, industries that fuel the state's economy. Yet paradoxically, the very workers who keep these sectors running, often earning low wages, frequently cannot afford to live anywhere near their places of employment. This leads to long commutes, financial strain, and housing instability. What happens when the paradise built for vacations and retirement becomes economically uninhabitable for the essential workers and the vulnerable elderly who reside there? The sunshine may be plentiful, but for a growing number, it illuminates a reality far removed from the dream, a quiet but devastating storm gathering beneath the surface. Moving northwest, we arrive in Washington. Instantly, images of aromatic coffee shops on every corner, the imposing headquarters of global tech giants, and the lush, seemingly endless expanse of evergreen forests might come to mind. It's a state often associated with innovation, natural beauty, and a certain progressive spirit. That's the common perception, the picture many hold. But there's a darker undercurrent flowing beneath this picturesque surface, a reality that most visitors, and even many residents, never fully see or acknowledge. This is Washington, a state now grappling with one of the most severe homelessness crises in the United States. Official data reveals tens of thousands of individuals living unsheltered, huddled in tents pitched in parks or under overpasses, seeking refuge in vehicles, or simply finding a spot on sidewalks to endure the elements. The scale is staggering. You'd be shocked to learn that the city of Seattle alone witnessed a 22% increase in its homeless population between the years 2022 and 2023. But these aren't merely abstract statistics. They represent profound changes in the fabric of communities. Entire neighborhoods feel transformed, with public spaces like sidewalks evolving into makeshift encampments out of sheer necessity. Imagine children trying to focus on homework within the chaotic environment of a shelter, or parents juggling multiple low-paying jobs yet still finding themselves unable to afford the basic security of rent. The financial pressures are immense. The median rent in major urban centers like Seattle has climbed above $2,200 per month, while the supply of affordable housing options drastically fails to keep pace with the demand. It's a stark reality that even individuals earning what might seem like a reasonable income, say $70,000 a year, are finding it increasingly difficult to make ends meet in this expensive environment. And this crisis isn't confined to the major cities. Rural areas across Washington are now experiencing significant spikes in homelessness as well, disproportionately affecting vulnerable groups such as military veterans and single mothers. Multiple factors collide to create this perfect storm: rampant addiction issues, a lack of adequate mental health services, the persistent pressure of inflation on everyday costs, and social safety nets that are simply overwhelmed and under-resourced. Adding another layer of hardship is the climate. What makes the situation even more perilous are the cold, damp Washington winters. For those living without shelter, exposure to the elements is not just uncomfortable, it's potentially lethal. Many do not survive the harsh winter months. The state is making efforts. There are programs, shelters, and initiatives aimed at addressing the crisis. However, the scale of the problem is overwhelming, and current efforts are proving insufficient. They aren't enough, and they aren't being implemented fast enough. Every year the crisis deepens. raising a difficult question. How does a state celebrated for its innovation and natural splendor fail so profoundly in housing its own people? How do we move forward when progress seems to leave so many vulnerable individuals behind? Let's turn our attention to Massachusetts. When you think of this state, perhaps cobblestone streets winding through historic neighborhoods, the prestigious aura of Ivy League universities, and the echoes of American history resonating from every corner come to mind. It's a place steeped in legacy, learning, and a sense of established tradition. Massachusetts often projects an image of stability and intellectual prowess. However, lurking beneath this polished surface of legacy and learning, a deeply troubling situation is unfolding, a reality that starkly contrasts with the state's esteemed reputation. The numbers paint an undeniable picture, and the truth is more chilling than many realize. This is Massachusetts, a state currently confronting one of the most severe family homelessness crises in the entire nation. And you would be shocked to discover the sheer magnitude of this problem. In the year 2023, official reports indicated that over 7,500 families were living in emergency shelters, motels, or other forms of temporary housing. It's crucial to emphasize that these are families, not just individuals, often including working parents struggling desperately to provide for their children while lacking a stable place to call home. Many are diligently doing everything considered right, holding jobs, ensuring their kids attend school, yet still find themselves losing the battle for stable housing. What forces are driving this crisis? A confluence of factors is at play. Sky-high housing costs that are among the highest in the country, extremely tight rental markets with fierce competition for available units, and fundamentally limited physical space for new, affordable development, particularly in desirable areas. Consider the city of Boston, where the median rent has now surpassed $3,000 per month, and vacancies are exceptionally rare, making it incredibly challenging for low and moderate income families to find housing. Adding another layer of complexity, Massachusetts, like New York, is experiencing a significant increase in newly arrived migrant families seeking refuge. This influx places immense additional strain on a shelter system that was already stretched far beyond its intended capacity. Consequently, families are often housed in temporary, less than ideal situations. Motels, repurposed gymnasiums, and even college dormitories during off-seasons. These are temporary fixes, band-aids on a deep wound, addressing a problem that is anything but temporary in nature. And here's a detail that adds another layer of concern. Massachusetts is a cold state. Its winters can be brutal, with freezing temperatures and significant snowfall. For families lacking stable shelter, these conditions aren't just inconvenient. They are dangerous, posing serious health risks. How does a state renowned for having some of the best hospitals and educational institutions in the world fail so profoundly to provide the most fundamental human need, shelter, for thousands of its families? What does this stark contrast say about societal priorities and the true fragility of stability, even in places perceived as prosperous and well-established? It's a quiet crisis, often hidden from view, unfolding behind the venerable facades of academic prestige and historic charm. But we are pulling back the curtain. Now, let's head south again, to Texas. The Lone Star State often evokes images of vast open spaces, booming industries, and a spirit of independence, where everything is supposedly bigger. Big dreams, big cities, big industries. That's the narrative. Texas prides itself on growth and opportunity. But behind this powerful image of booming growth and boundless potential lies a more complex and often hidden reality, a landscape where stark prosperity and grinding poverty exist side by side, often separated by just a few city blocks, and the line between the two is becoming alarmingly thin with each passing day. This is Texas, a state that, perhaps surprisingly to some, harbors one of the largest homeless populations in the United States. While it's true that some major cities, like Dallas, recently reported a 16% decrease in homelessness, this statistic doesn't capture the entire picture across the vast state. Because guess what? In many other parts of Texas, the situation is deteriorating, and it's happening rapidly. Shelters in Houston, for example, are reporting record-breaking demand, struggling to keep up. In Austin, sprawling tent communities have become a visible feature along major highways and beneath overpasses, a stark indicator of the housing crisis. Even in traditionally more stable rural areas, families are increasingly facing severe housing shortages, confronted by sky-high rents and a vanishing supply of affordable options. Consider this sobering fact. According to recent data, roughly 1 in 6 Texans lives below the official poverty line. And these aren't just numbers. They represent real people, real families, many of whom are barely managing to hang on, living paycheck to paycheck with no safety net. Adding to the concern is a growing youth crisis. An increasing number of young people in Texas are experiencing homelessness, many aging out of the foster care system with inadequate support, or fleeing unsafe or unstable home environments. Without robust support systems, their chances of breaking free from the cycle of poverty and homelessness are tragically slim. Texas is undeniably growing. People are moving to the state every single day, attracted by jobs and perceived lower costs. However, growth without adequate support infrastructure creates deep societal cracks. And right now, in Texas, those cracks are widening, threatening to become sinkholes that swallow vulnerable individuals and families. Rents in many areas have surged by as much as 30% in just the last few years. For a single parent working a minimum wage job, this creates an impossible financial cliff with no guardrail. How does a state renowned for its economic strength and independent spirit find itself breaking down behind the scenes? Why are so many Texans slipping through the cracks? And more importantly, what happens next if the underlying issues remain unaddressed? Finally, let's consider Oregon and Colorado, states often celebrated for their stunning natural beauty and progressive ideals, yet facing deep crises. Think of Oregon. Towering pine forests, dramatic misty coastlines, and a reputation for artisan coffee and a relaxed lifestyle. On the surface, it seems like a dream. But beneath this captivating beauty lies a truth many don't discuss. This is Oregon. And you'd be shocked to learn it has one of the highest rates of unsheltered homelessness in the country. In 2023, data revealed that nearly 70% of its homeless population was living outdoors or in vehicles, meaning no shelter at all. The numbers are staggering. Over 20,000 people in the state experiencing homelessness, and the count keeps rising. Portland, once lauded for its creative energy and vibrant neighborhoods, now grapples with large encampments, overstretched social services, and rising public tension regarding the crisis. But this isn't just an urban issue. Rural areas across Oregon are also feeling the immense pressure as housing becomes harder to find and increasingly expensive. What's fueling this? A dangerous combination: soaring rents, limited affordable housing stock, and a mental health system that is still struggling to meet the needs of the population. Perhaps most disturbingly, Oregon also has one of the highest rates of homeless children per capita. Entire families find themselves trapped in limbo, cycling through temporary shelters, motels, or living out of their cars. And Oregon's winters, often cold and wet, make survival for the unsheltered a daily precarious goal. Now consider Colorado. Snow-capped peaks, crisp mountain air, and a thriving economy. It sounds ideal, doesn't it? But look closer, beyond the tourist brochures, and you'll see something most visitors miss. This is Colorado, a place where the cost of living is climbing so rapidly that even full-time workers are being forced out of their homes. In Denver, homelessness surged by 31% between 2022 and 2023, according to the Metro Denver Homeless Initiative. You would be shocked to see how many people in this state known for outdoor recreation live in tents, enduring brutal winters with little or no access to essential services. The average home price in Colorado now exceeds $500,000, and rent prices are following close behind. While the job market appears strong on the surface, wages haven't kept pace, especially for lower and middle-income workers. Even the picturesque mountain towns aren't immune. Locals in places like Aspen and Vail are being priced out by wealthy second-home buyers and tourists, forcing service workers into hours-long commutes or resorting to sleeping in their cars. So, When did the dream of Rocky Mountain living transform into a daily struggle just to stay warm and fed? Across the nation, from the sun-soaked beaches of California and Florida to the historic streets of Massachusetts, the evergreen forests of Washington and Oregon, the bustling cities of New York and Texas, and the majestic mountains of Colorado, a stark reality is unfolding. The crisis of poverty and homelessness is not confined to specific regions or demographics. It is a systemic issue, spreading and deepening. More Americans are slipping through the societal cracks than ever before, facing impossible choices between housing, food, and healthcare. Many of the states we've discussed were once powerful symbols of opportunity, embodying the promise of the American dream. Now they serve as cautionary tales, highlighting the growing disparity between wealth and poverty and the increasing fragility of economic stability for ordinary people. The contributing factors are complex and interconnected. Skyrocketing housing costs far outpacing wage growth, a critical shortage of truly affordable housing, inadequate social safety nets, underfunded mental health and addiction services, the decline of traditional industries in some areas, and sometimes the added pressures of natural disasters or migrant influxes, straining already limited resources. These aren't just abstract economic trends or statistics. These are the lived realities of millions of individuals and families. The elderly senior who worked their whole life now living in a car, the single parent juggling jobs but still unable to afford rent, the veteran struggling with PTSD and addiction finding no support, the young person aging out of foster care with nowhere to turn, the family whose home was destroyed by wildfire or flood with no means to rebuild. These stories matter profoundly. They deserve not just to be told, but to be heard and acted upon. They demand our attention, our empathy, and a serious commitment to finding solutions. The American dream, for many, feels increasingly out of reach, replaced by a daily struggle for survival. The warning signs are clear, emanating from states across the country. The question is no longer if there is a crisis, but how deep it runs, and what collective will exist to address it before the cracks become irreparable chasms.